Welcome back to Azure Administrator Exam Prep Series. In AZ 104, Part 3, we are going to discuss about storage related exam question. We already discussed about compute. So we had two different parts of sessions for compute. And in the storage session, we are going to discuss around 20 questions. And in the exam, you can expect around 10 to 11 questions from storage topic. So before we get into the actual questions discussion, so primarily we need to understand how exactly the data gets stored in Azure cloud, right? So when you are selecting a particular geographical location, a physical data center, and you are storing the data, it generally gets stored into three different physical storage array. So physical storage arrays are nothing but it's a group of disk, right? And in that particular disk, the data gets stored. And minimum Azure ensures that you have three different copies of your data. So even in your on-premises also this happens, but at the disk level, but in the cloud, your data gets stored into three different disks into three different physical hardware. Okay, so this is a separate storage hardware and this is a separate storage hardware. We have three different storage hardware having your data stored, right? So minimum we have a three copies. So when you are putting your data into cloud, so cloud storage, so minimum there is three copies that is getting stored. So this is the basic fundamental thing, and you can increase the availability or redundancy of your data by storing them in different physical data center, or you can put them into different geographical regions. And even when you're storing it in different geographical regions, you can also make the data reads and writes in primary, and then you can also allow the application to go and read the data from the secondary location. So you have multiple different categories of redundancy that is there, and based on that, you can increase the durability of your durability of your data. Plus, you can also get a better SLA of your the Azure storage data. So these are the major options that are available. So local redundant storage means you are locally storing three copies of your data in three different physical storage in the same physical data center. So zone redundant storage means you are storing your data, three different copies of your data in three different physical storages, as well as these storages are in three different physical data centers. Okay. And when it comes to geo redundant or geo redundancy storage option, the data gets stored in two different geographical region. There are a total of 6 copies. 3 copies are getting stored in three different storage arrays, and in the secondary region, the 3 copies are getting stored in three different storage array. So the main difference between RAGZRS and RAGRS is that there is a Z component in it, the Z zone redundancy. So what they do is, like, the 3 copies that are getting stored in the primary and the 3 copies that are getting stored in the secondary, they will be ensuring that your data is getting stored in three different physical storage arrays. So that's the reason storage arrays in three different physical data center, three different physical availability zone. Okay, so that's the reason for the name RAGZRS. Okay, let's get into the question. Okay, one point before that. So when you are trying to migrate, or when you are trying to do a data movement from one kind of redundancy option to another, for example, from LRS to GRS, or if you're converting from LRS to ZRS, so you get a live migration option. Similarly, when you want to convert from GRS to GZRS or RAGZRS, you get a live migration option. But then there are some conversion that you can do using manual migration. And see, you are already in LRS, so you need not migrate it to LRS. Similarly, you are already in GRS, you don't have to migrate it to GRS. Yes, so that's the reason they are not applicable here. So because we already have the comparison for the same category. So certain migrations are live, certain migrations are manual, some migrations are not supported. Okay, so let's go and understand it. So in general, in the cloud, when you want to move the data or migrate, copy the data, or if you want to clone the data, you have a command line utility available for the Azure cloud. AZ copy, Azure copy command, or Azure copy utility tool. It is very much similar to your robocopy you might have used in your on-premises to copy the data from one server to another server. So Azure copy is a command line utility to copy the data from one container, I mean, when I say container, storage object or storage container to another storage container, or one storage file share to another file share in Azure platform. So primarily Azure Copy deals with copying of your objects from container to another container. I mean, when it's not your the application container or the compute concept, we are talking about the storage folder, the container. Okay, so generally the AZ copy deals with only the files and the blobs, and you can copy it from AWS to Azure or Azure to GCP, or you can copy between clouds. This AZ copy is a very robust command and it's a very powerful tool, and you can use them for copying the content. With that, let's get into the first question. Your company has a Microsoft Azure subscription. The company has data centers in Los Angeles and New York. You are configuring the two data centers as geo clustered sites for site resiliency. You need to recommend an Azure storage redundancy option. So these are the stem of the question. So they are saying data must be stored on multiple nodes. Okay, so they want multiple copies, fine. And data must be stored in separate geographical location. Okay, so GRS is minimum needed. So that means these option is not valid. This is also not valid because they want to store it in separate geographical region. And also they are also having a condition: data can be read from the secondary location. So only with read only geo redundant storage, the data can be read in the secondary. But with just GRS, you'll have 6 copies, but 3 copies will be getting stored in uh, two different regions. So read access geo redundant storage is the right answer. So well, let's move on to the next question. You have a Azure storage account named storage 1. You plan to use Azure Copy to copy the data to storage 1. You need to identify the storage services to which you can copy the data. As I told you, it doesn't support table, it doesn't support queue, it doesn't support table. Okay, it supports both blob and file. So it's not only file only. Okay, it can also support blob. So then that means blob and file are the right option. So it does support file, but the question says, answer says that it is file only. No, it is not just file only. It can also copy blobs objects from one container to another container, or one cloud to another cloud. You can also copy the files from between file shares. So it supports that. So let's move on to the next question. You have an Azure subscription named Subscription 1 that is used by several departments at your company. Subscription 1 contains the resources in the following table. Okay, it has got storage 1, RG1, resource group 1, container 1, share 1. Another administrator deploys a virtual machine named VM1 and an Azure storage account named storage 2. So in addition to these things, they also deployed virtual machine and storage using the same ARM template. The infrastructure as a code, they are used to deploy the template. They are used to deploy the resources. So they are asking us from which plate they can view the template that was used for the deployment, whether they can view it from the virtual machine, or whether they can view it from the storage, or whether they can view it from the container. Container is not a right option because it is just a component part of your storage. So they have used the same template, single template, for deploying both VM as well as storage. So if you want to view that template, so you have to be on your see, even if you go to your storage or virtual machine, you cannot view that. But if you go to the resource group, I will show you where to view it and where to download the template as well. So if you go to the resource group of this particular resource, so all the resources will be part of it. And if you go to the rightmost top 3 dots here, you can have the option to export the template. Plus, if you go to the deployment option, you can also go and view the template of a particular resource. For example, if I want to look at the file share, or if I want to look at the storage account, you have the option to view the template here. And even you can also download the template by selecting the specific resource by going here. But they just want to view the template, so which means resource group is the right answer. So you have to go to the resource group to view the template of both VM storage accounts. So because they have used only one infrastructure as a code template. So next question, you have an Azure subscription that contains an Azure storage account. You plan to create an Azure container instance named container 1 that will use a Docker image named image 1. Okay, interesting. So image 1 contains a Microsoft SQL Server instance that requires persistent storage. So they are using container, and that too they are looking for persistent storage. So containers support two types of persistent storage. One, you can put them into Azure Disk Storage. So Azure Disk Storage is not an option, and you can also put them into Azure Files. Okay, so these are the two options. Let me give you a glimpse of how or what exactly we are talking about. So when it comes to containers, or when it comes to AKS or Azure Container Service, there are two different persistent volume options that are supported. Either you can put them into a disk, or you can keep them into Azure Files. When you want to have concurrent access from multiple containers or pods, you can use Azure Files. If you want to have one-on-one mapping, you can also go for Azure Managed Disk. So these are the only two options that are supported persistent volumes for your containers or pods. Okay, so these are the only two options. Persistent volume are supported on disks and files only. And in this case, we did not have disk option. So we cannot choose it here. And the right option or the available correct answer is Azure Files. Okay, let's move on. The question is included in a number of questions that depicts the identical setup. See, when you are going with this kind of scenario based or multiple question and answer part of the same uh, umbrella question term, so you have to answer it that there only, because you cannot come back and review them and update them. Okay, so these kind of questions, try to answer it. That there is no negative marking in this exam, so go ahead and attend all the questions. How? Okay, so your company has an Azure subscription that includes a storage account. Okay, you have a resource group, you have a blob container, you have a file share. Okay, you have too many things in that subscription. A colleague named Stan makes use of a solitary Azure Resource Manager template. So a person has used a ARM template to deploy a VM as well as a storage account. I think we just saw similar question, right? So where can we view the template is their question, where they can review the template. So they can review it in resource group blade, and they cannot review it in container blade, they cannot review it in virtual machine blade, they cannot review it in storage blade. If you have those options, select no for them. So only location where you can go and view the template or review the template is resource group. Resource group is the right answer. You have an Azure subscription named subscription one that contains the storage accounts shown in the following table. Okay, so they've got multiple storages, and there are different kinds they have used: storage version 1, version 2, and they've got blob storage. They've got different services enabled in that. And you plan to use the Azure import and export service to export the data. So export the data from subscription one. You need to identify which storage account can be used to export the data. So see, generally you can import and export the data to both file as well as to blob, but exporting the data, let's go and understand here. Okay, so if you want to export the data, this is where people will get confused. So if you go to the supported import export option, you can see that both import and export are supported in Azure Blob Storage as well as Azure File Storage, but export is supported only where? In Blob Storage only. Okay, and you cannot, the Azure Files does not support the export option yet. So in that case, so you have to choose the Blob Storage. Storage 4 is the only option that can support exporting the data. So answer D is the right option. You have an Azure subscription that contains the resources in the following table: resource group 1, store sync 1, and what they want us to do is they want us to um, they have a file share on the Azure side named data, and they have around 5,000 files. They want to synchronize the files in the file share named data to an on-premises server. So what we generally do is we actually go and install the Azure file sync agent on the on-premises server one, and then we register them as an endpoint in the cloud, and then we start creating a sync group where the cloud file share data and the on-premises server folder location, derived location will start get synced. Okay, so there is no need for creating a container instance. There is no need for downloading the automation script. So if you go to the step-by-step instruction on how you want to replicate the Azure file sync or use the storage sync agent, first we need to install the agent, and then we need to register the server as an endpoint. So they call it as endpoint. The cloud file share is called as cloud endpoint, and the on-premises folder location, the drive location, is called server endpoint on the on-premises. Then we will start the synchronization between the cloud and the on-premises? So answer here is B, C, and E. These are the three right answer. Okay, let's move on. You have an Azure storage named Storage 1. You have an Azure service app named App1 and an application named App2 as well that runs in Azure's containers instance. Each app uses a managed identity. You need to ensure that App1 and App2 reads blob from the storage. The solution must meet the following requirement: minimize the number of secrets needed, so they do not have too many secrets, and multi-factor authorization is not needed. And they are saying ensure that app2 can read can only read from storage 1 for the next 30 days. They want to have a time bound or a day, they want to restrict it by a number of days. So if you want to restrict or if you want to provide access from your application to storage, there are multiple methods, out of which these are the most common ones. For example, if you go into your storage account and if you go and check the um, access options, right, you will get access key and shared access signature. The main difference between these them, this is just a small key. It is very straightforward. It is very, you can just copy them and then use it for accessing. Whereas the shared access signature, it gives you the option to go and limit the access until for next 1 week or 10, 30 days or whatever duration. For example, in this case, they want us to restrict access until next month, right? Which is 25th of May, right? So shared access signature is the right option for application 2. For application 2 is what they want to have the time bound access for the next 30 days. And for the first one, they want to minimize the number of secrets. So access keys are the right one. So for this one, this is the right answer for app 1. And for app 2, shared access signature, because they want to give access only for 30 days for the application towards the storage. So these are the two right option. You have to choose from the drop down. Next question. You have an Azure subscription that contains an Azure storage account. You plan to copy an on-premises virtual machine image to the container named VM images. You plan to create the container for the planned image. Which command should you use? So with AZ copy, so you have to use the make command to create a new container or to create a new folder on your storage account. And for creating a blob container, you have to choose the option blob storage account .blob.core.windows.net/vm images. So I can also show you how it works here. Let me log into my um, console az copy, and you want to make the blob, right? And you can just say enter and you can see the syntax here. So az copy make https the account name followed by blob.core.windows.net/ the resource name. So that is what we are selecting here, right? So the right answer is my storage account.blob.core.windows.net/vm messages. And you can use, if you have options like mk or mkdir or md, so those all will work as an alias. See here, they are saying it will work with make, it will work with mk, it will work with mkdir. So it's all creating a directory for copying your images in your storage account. It's pretty simple and straightforward. Next question. You have an Azure subscription that contains the storage account shown in the following table. You need to identify which storage account can be converted to zone redundant storage by requesting a live migration. So you need to convert it to ZRS, and yeah, let's see. So only LRS are supported. Okay, so local redundant storage. And in this case, okay, it doesn't support the blob. Okay, so blob storages are not supported, and storage version 2 is the one supported for live conversion or live migration. So you can migrate from LRS to ZRS, you cannot downgrade. Okay, so these are all in RAG, ZRS, or GRS are one level higher, so you cannot just downgrade them, but you can upgrade them, especially like if you want to upgrade them live, then you need to do it from LRS to ZRS. That is what we had seen in the table, right? Only LRS, and that too, the LRS standard version 2 is the one that supports the upgrade. So you plan to create an Azure storage account in the Azure region of East US2. You need to create a storage account that meets the following requirements. They want to have a synchronous replication, okay, which means it has to be within the same region, right? If you want to have a synchronous replication, because replication between two different region is actually asynchronous. There is a minor delay. There is a minor RTO there, and remains available if a single data center fails. They're talking about only availability zone failure. So they're not talking about regional failure. So how should you configure the storage account? So the first answer will be the replication has to be done with ZRS, the zone redundant storage, so that you have multiple copies across three different data centers. And the account type that you have to use is ZRS is only supported in GP version 2. It is not supported in version 1. So that is the important point. That is the way you can differentiate it. You have an Azure subscription named subscription 1. You have a 5 TB of data that you need to transfer to subscription 1. You plan to use an Azure import export job. What can you use as the destination of the imported job? Okay, so they are asking us what can be used as the destination of imported job. So it can be file storage or it can be blob storage. So here they are just given only the file storage option for import export. So if you have an option called blob, you can also choose that. If you have an option for file, you can also choose any of them. But these are all not the right option. Okay, the database and storage sync service, because this is an alternate for your storage sync service. You are using Azure import export. Azure import export supports both blob storage as well as file storage. Yeah. Which option is not a component of your Azure File Sync agent? So it is straightforward. This MSI file is not part of your Azure File Sync agent. The others are part of your Azure File Sync agent. It is pretty straightforward, simple question. You are asked to configure an Azure storage account that will have a publicly accessible domain name of Skillapistan. You need to apply the custom domain name to the storage account. So if you want to apply the custom domain name, it is only supported in blob storage. I can quickly show you. If you go to here and go to custom domain under the networking section of your storage account, it will clearly say it is only supported for your blob data. Blob data is nothing but your object storage. So here, then the answer is blob storage. Blob storage is the only answer that is supported. So this is not supported, queue is not supported, disk is not supported, table is not supported. Very straightforward. So when you want to do a keep files in sync in an Azure file sync agent, you need to define what? You need to create endpoints first. So you need to add the cloud endpoint, you need to add the server endpoint. So this is the right answer. So you need to create an endpoint. Very easy, very straightforward. You need to create an Azure storage account that meets the following requirement. You need to minimize the cost. You need to support hot, cool, and archive tier. Provide fault tolerance if a disaster affects the Azure region. So what they're looking for geographical redundancy. They're also looking for tiering, hard, cool, and archive, and also they want to minimize the cost. Okay, there is a catch here: minimize the cost. So let me quickly show you this comparison. So general purpose version 2 supports tiering, hard, cool, and archive. Version 1 does not support the tiering, and they also want cost saving there. Okay, so you have to choose storage account version 2 here. This is the right option for because they are looking for tiering, hard, archive, and cool, and they also want to minimize the cost. See, you can have regional geographical availability with GRS as well as RAGRS, but the cost is less than standard GRS option, because if you go for standard RAGRS, you can also read access the data in the secondary region. So this is little costlier. So right option is GRS. So LRS is nothing but local redundant copy in the same data center. Again, this is also in the same data center. So they are asking for geo redundant, and on the other side, they're also asking for minimizing the cost also. So then standard GRS is the cheapest option, and storage version 2 is the right option for tiering. You have an Azure subscription name, subscription 1, you create a Azure storage account named Contesto Storage, and then you create a file share name named data. Which UNC path you include in the script that references the files from the data file share. To answer, drag and drop. So you see, generally your UNC path will look like this. Let me show you in the console directly, so that way it is easier for you to understand. So if you go to your file share, if you go to the URL here, this is how it looks like. You have the storage account name dot file dot core dot windows dot net slash the um, file share name. So here in that case, you need to have the contour source storage first, okay, and that is your storage account name after the URL, and then you need to have the file.core.windows.net followed by the data. The data is named data only. So it is contour source storage.file.core.windows.net slash data. After the URL, it will be your slash folder name. So contour source storage.file.core.windows.net slash data. Simple. You have an Azure subscription that includes data in the following. You need to plan to export. Oh, again, export. We just saw this question, right? So we can export the data from where? Only from the blob container. So this is the only option you can utilize. So that means container one is the right option. Answer B, container one. Okay, hopefully this is the last question. Now we have a couple more. You have an on-premises server that contains a folder named D folder 1. You need to copy the content of D folder 1 to public container in Azure storage. Okay, this is very straightforward. We just need to use Azure copy command to copy the data from local folder to a remote Azure location. So AZ copy space copy command. So there is a command like that. Okay, so that will help you to copy the content. There are many different things you can do. You can copy from AWS to Azure. You can copy from local drive to cloud. You have a lot of different stuffs here. So CP or copy, they both can be used because they are alias command. So copy or CP, we can use either of them. So here, this is where we have the syntax, and the right option is this one. Synchronization is for syncing, and this doesn't allow me. There is no command here. Again, there is this is not needed. Okay, storage, blob, and all is not. Directly you can use AZ copy is the only command, and the following parameter or the option should be copy. Okay, so next question. The DevOps manager has asked you to create Azure storage account named in the North Europe region. Your line of business application named Stan App 1 is used by all the users within your organization. The storage account will contain Stan App 1 user profile pictures. Okay, so it will need to store objects, the pictures. And Stan App 1 will also create thumbnail images. Okay, again, images is the same. So they are saying which are only 24 KB in size. These images will be stored in the storage account. You also need to create message log to store the metadata of the each thumbnail. So they also need messaging. So message is supported where? In queue storage. So this is one option. And for your images and all those things, you can use the blob storage. So table storage is not the right option, and the file share cannot be used because we are talking about images, pictures, which are all object storage. So queue storage and blob storage is the right option. Final question. You are the security and compliance officer at Contoso Electronics. You need to ensure that you are complying to certain regulation, and the data stored on your Azure VMs cannot be accessed by unauthorized users, devices, or application. Which are the following options should you use to enable data on VM disk? They are talking specifically on the disk level encryption. Okay, so Azure Disk Encryption is the best option for this case. See, storage service encryption, it also gets enabled by default, but it is on the storage level, on the data store level, and encryption on host OS or third-party encryption. Yeah, these are all not very appropriate. Azure Disk Encryption is the best option to enable encryption at the disk level. And within your operating system, if it is Windows, it uses BitLocker to encrypt and decrypt the data. And if it is Linux, it uses dmcrypt. That is a tool or utility used for Linux operating system. But Azure Disk Encryption is the best answer. So in addition to these, you might also get a couple of other questions, like for example, for your file share, Azure file share, what is the maximum quota or file capacity? 5 terabyte. Okay, and the capacity is also that, and you can also set a quota here, which is again closer to the same sizing. Okay, so this is one. And the another question you might get is how to restrict the connections coming into your storage. So you can go to networking, firewall, and virtual network, and you can specifically allow a particular IP range or virtual network, or you can also restrict them coming through internet route or Microsoft network route? So these are the questions that you can expect from the storage topic. Thanks for listening.